hopefully that will start letting people in. Hello, everybody that's joining us. I can see the numbers going up. Hi, Alicia. So we'll just give it a few minutes and just let a few people join. Everybody's had a good day that's joining us. And if you haven't, then hopefully the next 60 minutes is going to help with that, and you'll come away feeling a lot better today. I know the weather's not been great, which doesn't help things at the minute, does it? But hopefully after tonight's session, you'll all feel a little bit more uplifted. So we'll just give it another minute. Hi, Greg. Nice to see you've got a gin ready. Everybody grab a beverage, alcoholic or non-alcoholic, whatever your preference is. And then we'll get started in a second. Okay, guys, thank you all for joining tonight. Hi, Ellie. Some nice chats coming through already. Hi, guys. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Melanie. I work for Transition Partners and I head up the Senior Appointments Division. Transition Partners are a IT, business change and transformation recruitment consultancy. But I guess we do a lot more than that. So the truth is, recruitment is our day job, but we love to give back to the tech community as well. So we do lots of things like vlogs, podcasts, Women in Tech podcasts, Let's Talk Leadership podcasts, and we also love to hold events as well. So we do probably 30 to 40 events a year, normally in our offices in Leeds, but of course we've had to take these virtual. So including this What the Tech event, which is actually our 5th event of this type tonight. So it's amazing. And I don't know, Sarah, about you, but when we first started these 7 months ago, back in April, I didn't think we'd still be doing this 7 months on, and it's absolutely amazing that we are. So thank you to everybody who's got involved. Thank you to the people that have been on the panels. Thank you to everyone who's logged in and supported us through this and just kept us all connected. I think it's really important that we keep sharing experiences and support each other through these times. So my hope is not in the too distant future that we can all get together in our office in Leeds. We can supply you with alcohol, pizza, and we can do a big What the Tech reunion. So fingers crossed it's not too far away. So tonight we have an amazing panel that Sarah's going to facilitate some great conversations around. And just before that, I guess, just to give a little bit of insight into the format. So we do have some topics that we're going to cover off, but of course we want to make this as relevant as possible to everyone who's listening. So if there's anything that you want to hear about, if there's any kind of like certain topics that you want to have discussed, the panel are really open to that. We've had a really great chat before the event. I'm really excited because there's going to be some super inspirational kind of points made and experiences made tonight. So just pop any questions in the question and answer box or the chat box. Sarah will try her best to cover them all off, as she always does. And yeah, we will do our best to cover everything off tonight. But okay, so that's it from me. I can sit back and relax and hand over to Sarah. So she'll introduce herself and then hand over to the panel to also do some introductions. And I really hope you all enjoy it. And more than anything, I hope you all just come away feeling more uplifted and inspired and have a nice big smile on your face. So enjoy, and I will see you all soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Mel, and thank you, Transition Partners. I can't believe it's episode 5. I was thinking back to when we started at the beginning of lockdown and the first time round, and it was, such a frightening time. And, we wanted to tell stories of leaders and, authentic leaders who really were, leading from the front. And it's exciting today to be, episode 5 and have another fantastic panel. So thank you so much. My name's Sarah Tulip. I'm a director by day at EY, so I run the digital piece across the North, engaging with lots of different types of technology businesses. I'm also the co-founder of Wild, which is a diversity initiative also across the North. So that's kind of my 2 things that really excite me, as diversity and technology, and across the middle of that is people. So this is the perfect way to bring the 2 together. So what I'd like to do first of all is let my panel introduce themselves. So I'm going to work around my screen. So Mark, starting with you, it'd be great to hear a little bit about you, where you're from, and what you've been up to.
Well, it usually takes me about half an hour, but I'll condense it to a 2-minute maximum.
Well,
so
you know.
I used to be a developer. I worked in a couple of consultancies, and then I moved to London for a bit for the dot-com boom in the early 2000s. That all went a bit pear-shaped. So I came back to Leeds, got a job at a company that was eventually bought by Sky. So I was working at Sky for length of service shows about 17 years, but that included the company that they bought. And we just used to basically do sports websites, and then when Sky bought us, we did the Sky Sports website for them. I learned with working with Sky in the early days when they bought us that there was this thing called agile working, and I went to work on a project with a guy down in the London office who was a Scrum Master, and I'd never heard of that before. And I just thought the way that they were working was amazing. He gave me a new idea of how we could do things in the Leeds office. So between a couple of us in the Leeds office, we sort of put our hands up as developers and said we'd really like to be Scrum Masters and see if we can make things work better. We worked very much traditionally. Someone gives us a bunch of work, we do it, give them it back. 6 months later, they said, no, this is what we wanted. We redo it, they give them it back, and then they say things have changed now, I want something else. So we started doing Scrum, we started doing, working more agile, and it was sort of quite interesting at the time. I was reading a lot of the books and materials around at the time, and it seemed to work really well. So I was a Scrum Master for a good few years, and then Leeds, there was about 30 of us working in Leeds for Sky, and then my old boss got word from the London office that they were moving a bunch of developers up to Leeds from the London office. And in the space of about a year and a half, we hired nearly 500 developers and BAs and Scrum Masters and QAs into the Leeds dock. And I helped a guy called Paul Lemon that been brought in from BBC create one of those teams. I was sort of Scrum Master, but also sort of one of the first employees in that transition team. And it was brilliant. We did, I think, 150 people in that first team. I learned a lot of things about the company, purchasing computers, doing the Scrum Mastering, putting the ways of working together, how Agile was going to work for us, and interviewing all sorts of really interesting people and hiring all sorts of really interesting people. And then another team was scheduled to come up, and I got asked if I'd like to actually lead that team rather than working for someone else doing it. And I said yes. And after about 2 years of doing that, I'd sort of done pretty much everything I thought I could as a head of technology at Sky, hiring teams, running teams. And LADbible came knocking at my door. And that was just a really random one. The founder asked me if I wanted to go and have a chat. There was no hint of a job, but he just said, do you want to chat? I met him in a random pub in Manchester, and he offered me a job within 2 days. So then I ended up, that's how I worked at LADbible. And that was a completely different company, very, very non-corporate, no process, just all about the people and what people could do in as quick a time as possible. And I had to start again, built another tech team, looked after data science, IT support, the devs, the BAs, the QAs, well, say BAs, QAs, we haven't got any QAs at the moment, but that's another story, and the UX team. So I'm looking after, went from about 64 people at Sky to about 25 people at LADbible, but it's incredibly interesting, very, very fast paced. And I'm looking after a lot more sort of diverse, different sort of areas of the company as well. So, data science never looked after before. IT support is something completely new to me in the 3 years that I've been here. That's been really interesting as well. And some people don't think it's interesting, but it has been, especially this year. And yeah, just coming up to our 3rd year anniversary. So instead of trying to do that in 2 minutes, I think it was
that wasn't bad. That really wasn't bad. And yeah, bringing a bit of joy, I guess, via social media to us very now.
Hopefully, yes.
Excellent. Bontle, would you like to give an introduction?
Yeah, love to. So hi everyone, I'm Bontle. I am Executive Director of Transformation of Virgin Media. which basically means that I run a whole bunch of transformation related things, including kind of digitization, simplification on a lot of our support areas, plus our agile transformation. I'm also an agile coach, although I don't get to very much work with coaching these days and with actual teams, to be honest. Before this, I was director of agile transformation at Deutsche Bank in corporate investment banking. So a 9,000 person agile transformation, leading a team that was based all over the world. And before that, I was at McKinsey, where I co-led the Africa practices agile practice. Besides that, I'm also a trustee in a number of organizations, including St. Mungo's, Charity for the Homeless, plus Girl Code, an organization in South Africa trying to advance the agenda of women in tech, plus Puku Children's Literature Foundation, which is all about trying to bridge the digital divide for Indigenous language children's literature. And it should be no surprise that I'm also a children's book author.
Yeah, I saw that. That's super interesting. Thank you for that. Gordon, you're next. You're up.
Hi, so I'm Gordon Cullum. I guess I'm about as stereotypical an IT person as they come. IT, when I was in my teenage years, building computers, did an IT degree, started off as a developer, discovered this wonderful thing called architecture, where you get your first taste of power on your first project, where you get to play with all the building blocks and make the thing you want to come live. And I was lucky enough to work on the London Eye program back in the early 2000s when that was. So building a whole website booking system, gate pass controls, point of sale tills, really, really good fun, and sort of really dipped me in at the deep end of what it is to sort of run a really, from a technology point of view, a high pressure program. After that, did years of contracting, quite a lot of fun, just running around doing different things, working for various organizations and sort of learning new strings, but spent the last 8 years until my most recent role at Mastek. I will let Marsia talk about Mastek, where I finished up, where I left there last month, having become the CTO and director of consulting there. So I looked after our consulting practice, our technology and architecture delivery in the business and our technology roadmap. I'm now the technology director at Axiologik. I was tempted to come to Axiologik and build out their technology practice. We have up until recently been a program management specialist, really. But I was tempted to come and build out our technology services by a client role. So I'm currently doing the deputy digital lead for strategic trace for NHS Test and Trace, which is
Hot topic.
So I'm doing that for a few months. Fingers crossed. I say a few months, and not that I can say anything about when that might end. Yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. And before we get to Marsia, I do want to remind everybody that we're going to have live Q&A as well. So if you hear anything that you want to hear more about or you have questions for, please throw them in the Q&A and I'll try and bring them through as we go through the conversation. Sorry, Marsia, your introduction.
Thanks, Sarah. So yes, I'm Marsia Brancken. I didn't prepare a bio like Mark. I feel quite intimidated. I can't rattle off my history like that. My journey started in South Africa. I was a developer. We immigrated in 2000 and we've been in the UK ever since. Kind of didn't plan to stay, but it kind of just happened. Like most of my career, I never planned my next move. It kind of just happened and see what happens next. If you look at my history, I'm a very, very typical failed contractor, where I go perm at most of the companies that I contract for. So we came to the UK. I worked in financial services and insurance software for most of that time until about beginning of about 2012. Then I moved into Asda. That's where I met Gordon for the first time. And then a couple of consultancy roles, then went to Mastek, UK, where I am at the moment. I am one of the portfolio leads for Mastek. I currently look after both the private sector portfolio and the health portfolio. I've got a team split between the UK and India, so I've got probably an organisation of just short of 800 people. That's me.
Fantastic. So we talked about some different topics that we're going to cover off today, and I think an interesting place to start is we're in second lockdown, and it's a difficult time and a different lockdown, I think, for people. But do people feel, and we'll start wherever, but do people feel that this is a different lockdown, and do they feel that they've gone in with lessons learned and a different approach to this one? And that's from a business and personal perspective. So not sure if anybody wants to pick that up. Marcia, I think you've come off mute.
Sorry, I'll go back on mute. No, I'm actually thinking that I think people are finding the second lockdown less imposing. I don't think people are following the rules quite as much as maybe the first time around. I think the scare factor is probably worn off a little bit, which is probably more scary because it means that our numbers will go up, right? So, yeah.
It's interesting as well with you and Gordon being involved with that track and trace piece, because I felt personally that I've been really strict this second lockdown, because I feel like, you know, I want this to pass, you know, I want to get to Christmas, I want to see my family, and I've kind of got something playing in my head. But I feel like a lot of people feel like, or that I've spoken to, kind of have this like slightly different rule, like if I'm abiding by the rules except that one person who I see, or except those friends that have just had a baby, or except. So I'm not sure what your thoughts, Marcia or Gordon, is just from a track and trace perspective of what you're seeing. And
I'm careful to give my view here and not the view of the
yeah, of course.
I think Marcia's right. I think people are finding it easiest time because I think that people are obeying the rules probably haven't really that much changed anyway. So I don't think people that sort of are taking it I guess personally and morally seriously, and that's not to cast aspersions at people who are going about their work.
Yeah.
Probably stay fairly isolated anyway, particularly people in our sphere, which are mostly IT people who can do our jobs from home. So, you know, I, like most people that I've worked with for the last 9 months, simply haven't really been back to the office, haven't been traveling, have been shopping online, minimizing the time I've been going out. That's not me just saying how great I am. That's just I'm saying that's what people have been generally doing in my sphere. So they haven't found it particularly difficult this time around, because it's actually a little bit, if you look at the rules, are a little bit more relaxed than the hard spring lockdown anyway.
Yeah.
But those that are thinking a little bit more like, well, they can't do their job as easily from home, or they're tired of it and they're fed up of all this, and are doing that kind of, I'll just see that one person, or I will allow people into my home, or I will, you know, just chat in the garden. Well, we've seen the numbers, we've seen the effects of that. It is damaging the service, and it is damaging the country. And relying on the fact that this vaccine is going to be a silver bullet in the next few weeks, it's not. It's going to take some time for that to have any effect on us whatsoever. The best tools we have, whether we like it or not, are what we're doing, and it's not perfect. I don't want to get into the whole economics of it, because I'm sure there are people that could argue all ways on that, and that's not what this meeting's about. This conversation is about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I've observed, really. That it's kind of really quite split. So most people that I know and associate with are probably still doing the same things they were before, because they've continued to do so all the way through anyway, really. But then at the other end of the spectrum, I mean, there's no real middle bit. People are just saying, well, it's not working, so I'll do what I want to do, more or less.
Yeah, maybe that's confusion in the leadership and the way we're communicated to. Bontle, you've come off.
Yeah, I did. I mean, what I wanted to say is, for me, it's quite interesting because this isn't my first pandemic. I was in Sierra Leone during Ebola and working on transformation there. So it was already, for me, my expectations of how long this will last, how this all plays out, are completely different from everyone else's. Because in my mind, you know, this time next year won't feel that different, to be honest. And I've already psychologically accepted that, and that's okay, because not all the population will have the vaccine, and this will still be something that we need to cope with and live with. What I've definitely seen, though, is, you know, the people, as far as that I've seen in my sphere, whether it be personally or professionally, have a lot more anxiety related to the lockdown at the moment. I think there's something about the changing of the weather, the shorter days, darker days, but also just the uncertainty of what happens next, and not being able to look beyond December, really, that people are feeling. So one of the lessons we've certainly learned is about being able to sustain the conversations on well-being and on psychological well-being, because, you know, mental health was a hot topic in the beginning, but certainly what we've started doing is making sure that we're having regular conversations about it at every big forum, but also at every small meeting, right? Just checking in with people on how they're doing, because in reality, most people are not doing particularly well.
Yeah, I think there's that thing, isn't there, that nobody really knows. It's really hard to plan for uncertainty. And that must be something in us as humans that I think really has come out, that we really struggle. Mark, what are your thoughts?
Uncertainty is the thing. I think, you know, uncertainty is a problem when we haven't got a global pandemic and we, you know, all having to do different things. You know, uncertainty has been a problem that I've had to manage throughout my managerial career. You know, people don't like to not know what's going to happen. even if it only affects them on a small level. You know, I've had staff that have been, well, what's happening with this and what's happening with that? And you think, well, it's not really going to affect you, but still are not keen on not knowing what's going on. And when, you know, when it gets to this level where people can't do simple things like booking a holiday in February next year, you know, it just messes with people's mental health. And, you know, even if they don't immediately feel those anxieties, a lot of these things build up. And I've, just from, you know, from a personal point of view, my team, we actually had a few people go back to work, but we opened our office and just said it's voluntary, optional. You can come in if you want, and we've got a maximum capacity. And actually, quite a few people went in. They tended to be the people that were living alone and, you know, were just fed up of being in the house on their own for 3 months. But now that we're going to second lockdown, there's a lot of fatigue there. You know, they were enjoying coming back into the office and getting back to a normal life. And even though it wasn't normal, you know, now that they've had to lock themselves back in the house, you know, they are feeling that it's come along a second time. It's almost like, you know, mentally you let go of that anxiety from before and think, like, I can go back to work now, everything's going to be okay. And then you get asked to do it again. Yeah.
Yeah, and looking at the conversation that's going on, there's a lot, again, it's around people and anxiety. And it's interesting that I work in the tech sector, I speak to a lot of tech businesses. And initially there was a lot of conversation around, we're getting a lot more out of our team. We're getting 130%. People are working harder and longer. And that's so unsustainable, because I think that's really just hit people right now. I feel like, you know, that over expectation, and I think people did it for lots of different reasons. I think people did it because they were scared they were going to lose their jobs, that if they didn't do it, the company would fall, that they needed to change, that for so many reasons. And I just wonder, like, as organizations, if there's anything that you guys are doing that, you know, could be replicated to support individuals, or ways of thinking or initiatives. Is there anything that, you know, stands out? Mark, you've come off. Are you?
Yeah, there's a couple of small things that we did. We're not a company that likes people to roll over holidays across holiday boundaries. They've always been quite strict with that at LADbible. We did make sure that quite early on this year that we looked at how that was going to work going into next year. You know, when we were going to, we agreed that we weren't going to let people roll over holidays. You know, people weren't taking as much time off. Ironically, people aren't taking as much sick time off as well, which is a good thing. You know, but we wanted to make sure that people are aware that, you know, you don't have to take all your holidays now because you can't go away. However, we did also have, as a leadership team, make sure that we were telling people to try and take holidays if they could, even if that was, you know, before second lockdown. It was just to take a break in the UK, or take a break with their kids and go for walks and that sort of thing. So there's sort of, you know, two sides of that. You don't have to take your holiday this year. You can chill out about that and just, you know, not worry about it too much. But on the flip side, please try and take holiday if you can. And we were actually looking at people's holidays and making sure that people were taking holidays.
Do you think that thing around sickness, I don't know if anybody else is like, people maybe are poorly, but they think I've only got to go downstairs and I'm only going to put my joggers on, so I won't take a day's sick, or they're not regarding their mental health as sickness and taking time that they need for their own personal wellness? Gordon, I see you've got.
Yeah, I definitely think that's definitely true. On the basis of I've heard people say that to me a number of times. But there's also, I think, if you dig a little bit deeper when the person is talking to you, there's underlying anxiety there that maybe not so much now because people are used to it, particularly in more secure areas of work. But in the earlier days of when, you know, furlough was the big word, I think people were worried about being on the radar. You know, oh well, if I am, you know, taking time off, or I'm not as productive, or I'm not visible in certain meetings, am I going to be the one that gets my, you know, collar felt for not having a job because there's going to be an economic impact to our business? So I think people had two reasons to do that in the early days, which was one, it is only dragging myself to the desk, and the other one is there's a fear of, you know, should I be visible and be seen to be productive even if I'm not necessarily that well and at my best. And
digital presenteeism almost now we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was and that became a general worry to your point about productivity. So aside from people being ill, so I think back to my days at Mastek, the consulting team there was probably about 50, 60 people, and it's probably evenly split with people that had youngish families, so probably, you know, anything from 6-month-old babies to 3, 4, 5-year-olds. And within a few weeks, people were saying things like, can I take hours off during the day to spread the childcare between me and my wife, and then work late long hours and even work weekends if I have to. And part of me wanted to say yes, but part of me wanted to say, I don't like the idea of you saying you want to work weekends. It was more a case of you do what you feel you need to do to feel comfortable in doing the job you do. I'm not here to tell you what hours you should work. Now, it's kind of never been my style to do that anyway, but more so during the lockdown, because it only adds to the pressure then of the, oh, well, I've got to time that hour with the baby, or I've got to time that hour for lunch. I'd rather people felt more relaxed in getting the job done. Now, I appreciate that not all jobs are the same, and not all jobs can work quite that flexibly. We had the luxury of working in an industry where that, of course, more or less can be that flexible, hard meetings notwithstanding. So I had a bit of a talk with the whole team saying, you do what you need to do, basically, but I you know, short of something exceptional, I don't want to hear this talk of working weekends to make your hours up, because it's not about making hours up. It's about just making our way and coming, you know, as a team and as an organisation, and for our clients and for our people at the moment. It's not about.
Well, there is that thought, that train of thought, you know, you shouldn't work hours, you should work against what you deliver. So really, should we be saying that people work 9 to 5, or is that really reasonable anymore? Should it be much more about, you know, these are the things that you have to deliver within your role, and if you deliver those things, fit your life around it. You know, I know it might feel very wafty to some people, but I wonder, you know, is it actually what you deliver that matters?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, there are commercial implications to that sometimes, because when you're a supplier of services, you know, you're either working in a fixed output mode or you're working in a T&M mode sometimes. So you may be with your own team within your organisation more understanding than your client is on the odd occasion, and we have seen that. I'm sure other people on the call probably got more recent experience than I have. But yeah, completely agree.
Cool. Anything anybody else wants to bring to that? I see there's some further questions around it, and the first one is around digital burnout, which very on topic, but it's saying it's more prevalent than ever, and then asking if there are any tips around that. It was interesting, I spoke with somebody this week, and they were talking about they have no FaceTime Friday, and unless it's a client call, you're not allowed, you know, like you get those calls all the time, internal calls where you're on video all the time. They say no face on a Friday. And there was another person I spoke to, and they said that one day they insist that people do 2 walk and talks. So they insist that 2 of the internal meetings are done on a phone, and they do a walk and talk. So I'm not sure if there's anything that anybody else has been doing or has heard of that's interesting and is combating, I guess, the digital burnout that people are seeing. Is there anything anybody's?
Look, I think that there's a lot that's been happening from our perspective in terms of trying to help people deal with that fatigue, whether it be trying to impose a lunch break, because a lot of people just kind of work through lunch and continue to work. So just saying, like, everybody, you know, 12 to 1 is a time that you should take to eat your lunch, be with your family, do whatever, take a walk. Or, you know, giving people access to apps like Unmind, so that they have something as a tool that they can use to take a little bit of me time, or some meditation or whatever. I know some people who did kid story times. So in the afternoon, they'd take like an hour or 30 minutes or something, and one person would read to everybody else's kids on the Zoom call or whatever, to give you 30 minutes that you can do something else potentially, or just not be so always on. So there's been a whole bunch of those kind of interventions taken. The one that I particularly liked was a lot of people talked about missing their commute, not because they love being on the tube for an hour or whatever, but because it is a transition period between your work time and your home time. And it's quite difficult to switch over so quickly, right? And so some people have been doing almost a fake commute, which is what I've started doing, which is just 30 minutes that I read a book, right, in my office space, so that I can have some sort of turn off from work, because otherwise I'm just in work mode downstairs making dinner or whatever, but not really doing there's no transition off period and trying to be off. So my fake commute is definitely a good one for me.
Yeah, I really like that. I've heard people who say, you know, because I don't have my commute, it means I can work a longer day. And I think that's an absolute no. It's just not healthy. It can't be good for you. So
I think my answer to that one is, you know, if you normally get up at 7 o'clock for work in the morning so you can travel an hour, but you still want to get up at 7, that's fine. You just finish earlier. You know, you don't need to still get up at 7, start working at 7, and then finish at 5:30. You know, if you still want to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, fine. If you want to work, fine, but finish earlier. Don't work all the way through.
Yeah, and you know, like this particular lockdown is coming to an end in some capacity. And as some of you mentioned, you know, some people were in the offices before, so there could be quite a shift again. There could be people, you know, traveling to offices with the opportunity to do that. So I guess there's again that thought leadership from businesses and leaders. What does that look like again? And trying to manage that in the office. And that leads on to a question we've got from Connor. And it says, where do you see working from home office balance going? And I guess this is a huge question because he's saying that he's been in the office to execute tests on applications, and it's challenging to get in touch with colleagues when you're working from home. It can slow down answers, and just some tips around ensuring communication stays strong when people are working from home. So I guess the bigger question there is, like, how do you communicate in a hybrid way or in a completely digital way? Who wants to pick that up?
It's something we've worried about quite a lot, which is during full lockdown, it's quite easy for people to always be present with each other in their projects because everyone's in the same boat. And during full unlockdown, of course, people are either co-located or they know how to get in hold. It's the hybrid thing that is really damaging there, and that's probably the crux of the question. I think it's about trying to use some kind of nudges on behaviours that we've developed during lockdown to try and make them portable and translate across. So I pick a specific example that might be a good way of illustrating the point. So if you're doing a workshop and you're all online, you're all using the same tool and you're all in a room. If you're doing a workshop that's hybrid and they've got 3 people in a room and 3 people in 3 separate locations, then it's very easy for the offline chat to happen. And they don't feel it's offline, of course, they feel it's online, but of course the 3 people remote feel offline because they're not having that chat. They can't see the sketch they're drawing on a piece of paper or whatever. And the simple behavioural thing there is call it out. It wasn't acceptable whilst we were locked down. It isn't acceptable whilst we're in hybrid. Now, that doesn't solve specifically the testing, the question about getting hold of contacts when you're in the office and they're not, but it's a specific thing that's a worry during hybrid, where you've got people participating like in this sort of almost like clumpy type operation rather than fully fine grain or fully coarse. And I think the other thing that we've said, and this is in our delivery unit now across the trace unit, is that might be a little bit help to the specific question about getting contact with colleagues is just be present. I know presenteeism is a bad word, but colleagues need to get hold of you. So if you're not signed into Slack or Teams or whatever your tool of choice is, it's really hard for people to know whether you're available. Whereas at least when you're in the office, they could see you at your desk and they could see that you weren't on a call or that you weren't typing an email or that you had got up to go and get a coffee. That little indicator that shows whether you're available or not might only seem like a little green LED to you, but to somebody who desperately needs contact with you, that could be a lifesaver. That's a really important thing for them to be able to know. And so that means it comes with gives and takes, because it's not a nice thing to want to constantly transmit your availability, but it's almost a necessity for the people that need you to be able to substitute that for the physical knowledge reaction they get from being in an office with you. And so, small things, I think, is what helps, and the little behavioural nudges.
Yeah, and I think as well, if I think about when I was starting my career, that a lot of how I learn is by watching people around me, and I imitate that. That's naturally what I do. I look at the people who are doing things well, and I kind of get close to those people and I start doing what they're doing and behaving how they're doing that. And I think especially for junior members of staff, how are they able to learn? Things feel a lot more, people are given tasks, go away, do that. How do you have that conversation of like, can I just ask you, mind if I just ask you that question? Mind if I just ask you that question? That capability really feels restricted. So I'm not sure if anybody's got anything that they feel is working in that space, Mark.
Yeah,
well,
Marsia, sorry.
Yeah, go on, Mark.
I was just going to say it's an age-old technique. It's not a new one, but it's something that we didn't do before because we had quite a small development team. Since we've had a couple of new hires in a lot, we had to allocate the buddies and just do a buddy system. And as I say, I know it's not a new thing or groundbreaking, but that's really helped. So someone comes in and says, "This is the person that you're going to be liaising with." We'll make sure that they have a good meet and greet when they first join, and then we'll make sure that it also makes everybody else on the team on a one-to-one Zoom call as well. So when you come in and you're face to face with people, it'll sort of naturally stop talk to people and get friendships. We've had to force that in this environment. So we have a one-to-one with everybody on that team over a Zoom call over the first couple of days, and allocate them a buddy that they can ask for any help if it comes to it. As I say, it's not a groundbreaking system, but we weren't doing that in the office before we've had to now.
Yeah, and Marsia, I saw you came off. Sorry.
No, that's fine. So I was only going to say that one of the things we are considering for once we return to the next phase, whenever that will be, is looking at how we use our office spaces to think about whether we turn more of that into collaboration spaces and to plan a little bit better about when you have to be in the office, and if you have to do your focus work, then that's maybe okay to not do from the office. But when you go into the office, that is because you've got a specific reason to meet with specific people, to do specific workshops or so on, but not just to go as a matter of course to sit on your own basically and work. So kind of put more purpose around what the purpose of a collaboration space is.
Yeah, I think you're right. And to be honest, there was an opportunity for me to go back into my office briefly, but I think we were having 20 people in a 400 people office. So I might as well be at home rather than isolate myself with other people. It didn't feel collaborative. And that's one of the reasons I love being in the office is, like bouncing off other people. So I absolutely agree. There are some questions around this. So just to take a look at some of those. Liz is asking, she doesn't manage a team and she feels cut off from other teams in terms of knowing what they're working on and what challenges. So kind of inter-team relationships and the stuff they do in the kitchen. How are you making sure different teams are empathetic of each other and not getting suspicious about people slacking? That's really interesting because you do kind of have these team meets, but then you don't know what other people are doing. So anybody got some thoughts on how they work across the teams?
I mean,
they're working.
After you.
The questions about how to work across multiple teams.
Well, yeah, how you well, I think it was a lot of a variance of that. So kind of how do you know what other teams are doing and how do you support each other and maybe know what they're pulling their weight as well?
I mean, look, I think there has to be trust at the basis of all of this, to be honest. And I think one of the things that we worked on was really getting to people to trust each other a little bit more, because not being able to see people directly does not mean that they're not doing stuff, does not mean they're not pulling their weight, let's say. We have to build a little bit more psychological safety and trust amongst each other. So one thing that we did was cross-functional teaming and finding particular topics that we could work on across multiple teams, not just in your own silo, so that you're forced basically to get to know people a little bit more and to work on different things. Other things we did was team sharing sessions. So the same way you do retros if you're an agile team, we did that across multiple teams. So even strategy, people working more transformation topics in the commercial areas, etc. Show and tells with executive leadership. There was a bunch of these things that we tried to do to make sure that people had an opportunity to understand what other people were doing. We'd have these really big virtual events as well. It's a 12,000 person organization. So trying to break it up into smaller bunches to give people the opportunity in teams, an opportunity to say, we're doing a commercial takeover, or we're doing a B2B takeover, or we're doing a people team takeover, to give people the opportunity to talk about the work that they were doing and share some of that. So that's been really, I think, a very positive aspect of this is creating the kind of trust and space for the conversations, allowing people to share and work on shared outcomes, and then saying, let's be cross-functional, let's share across.
Yeah, I agree, but I think most people, if you trust them, will do the right thing. There's always going to be somebody who isn't, but actually most people are going to do the right thing. We are all good people generally. Gordon.
Yeah, I think that trust one's an interesting one, isn't it? But most people, I think, is the key word there. So there will always be some who don't, and sometimes they're in a position where the work they're not doing, they don't understand the impact of the dependencies that other people have on that sometimes. So the old adage, trust comes with accountability, and calling out accountability when it's not there. And it's kind of, almost the side we don't want to talk about leadership, which is, the less fun side, which is how approaching people who aren't, dare I say, pulling their weight, and coaching them and making them understand why other people are relying on that work. And doing it the right way will build that trust with them, because they'll understand that you're coming at it from the right angle, you're trying to help them. Doing it the wrong way can obviously do some damage. If the person doesn't, this is almost old school managerial at this point, isn't it? There will always be some who don't respond to that. That's not unique to lockdown, though, is it? That's something that we always have to deal with anyway. It's a little bit more difficult when you're not able to have an actual face-to-face meeting. Having those meetings over a video chat is intensely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But you know, I think it's intensely uncomfortable when that's the only chat you're having with that person. And I hate this idea of pulling your weight, right? Because we're supposed to be kind of helping each other in a different way. And we got rid of performance conversations that are annual, got rid of ratings, got rid of this very old school managerial kind of approach to it, and said, look, we should be having continuous conversations. So it's not a one-sort conversation. It's not a new thing you're discussing. It is part of a continuous thing that you're doing. We are talking about how to help you and working with you on how to do that. So, you know, I disagree a little bit, because I think, you know, pulling your weight, we should be pulling each other's weight, and we should be helping each other. I get that there's poor performance, and I'm not going to discount on that, but I just think there are different approaches and different ways of thinking about that.
And you know what, I would say that there are times during lockdown that I haven't pulled my weight, if you want to call it that I was, for a large part of it, which is me and my 8-year-old son. And there were times I was definitely not pulling my weight, but I knew there would be times where I would be. And I think it's also understanding, you know, that people can't be all the time. And I think that it's such an interesting term because it comes with such pressures, doesn't it? But I guess not for this conversation, but having difficult conversations digitally is quite hard to do, I think. There's a nice question actually around new employees and being part of a team and part of a new company when remote working. I think most companies have hired now, whether they're big, small, they've made the jump and they've done a hire. Does anybody have any tips or ideas around doing that well, or things that they've done personally to make the experience go well, or even being hired?
So where we are, they are actually scheduled one-to-ones for everybody who meets, who comes new in, so they get to meet all the main people. So almost trying to recreate, fair enough, very, very unreal way. If you were walking into an office, you would say, this is so-and-so, and this is what he does, and this is so-and-so, and this is what she does. So trying to mimic that by setting up meetings with all those key players. And then where that is almost positive is you actually get to meet more people, because if you're in distributed offices, you don't get the opportunity to meet all of them. And as far as bringing new people into the team, we found that doing fun things normally works. So running a bit of a quiz or doing something a bit more fun brings people together, probably more than actual just work discussions.
Anybody else want to add to that? I agree. I think I've spoken to some, you know, like some fun people, and like, you know, different businesses will have different ideas of fun. So some people are like, yeah, we've been making bread, and some people are like, oh, we're playing like these like online games, and some people are just getting really drunk. I think like everybody has, like, every team has a different like view on what fun is as well. It's very very specific.
We had quite a reaction to that actually in our delivery team. I think it's partly because the team's burning quite hot at the moment. But we had weekly quizzes in the trace delivery team every Thursday evening. And first week or two, great turnout, 30, 40 people. It was just everyone, you know, glass of wine, glass of beer, the kids are joining. We had Disney rounds and all sorts of great fun. Week 3, that about 5 people. Week 4, 2 people turn up. And the feedback we got from the team, there wasn't really from the team saying, it's too much, we just don't want to do it. We've had enough of our colleagues by 6 o'clock, we've had video chat, too much screen time with them. We just want to go and spend time with our families. But they did recognise that we do want some fun time as a delivery unit, so that we still act as an emotionally charged group with a common objective. So we're moving it to be something in line with the all hands. So we do some kind of all hands where we share priorities and objectives and a bit of a rah-rah about why we're all here. And then after that, once every 2 weeks, do something of fun. And it's not always a quiz. It's usually something different. And we're moving to that to try and keep a bit of spice in there. But the message was there was pushback actually from our team saying it's too much. We just don't want it.
But you know, I was just going to say, like, I love being at work and I find it really fun. And I think that's one of the things that people miss right now is having fun at work. So should fun be during the workday? Should we be making sure that there is time for fun every day?
So that was exactly what I was going to say. You need to do this during the working day. You don't want it. I don't join after hours things, because I'm sitting up here in this room all day long. My kids want to see me. They don't have access to me during the day, although they do often make guest appearances. But they don't have access to me, so they want me to be available to them at night because they've seen me all day, but they can't access me. And that's almost worse than being in an office where you're away from home. So I've spent much more time away from home before lockdown, obviously, but even now working, it's less time than what I've spent away from home previously. But it's like they miss me more because they can see me, but they can't access me.
I get that. Does anybody, Mark, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's good. It does. Gordon's right. You know, we did the same thing. I think everybody did the same thing, didn't they? They just put quizzes on every week, and then numbers dwindled, and that exactly the same thing happened to us. When the company decided those numbers were dwindling too far, we have a bi-weekly show and tell anyway for the whole tech team. So we kept that in. So we still do the show and tell every 2 weeks, whenever we're just, shows everybody what they've done. But then we interleave that every 2 weeks with just a tech social. We don't put any rules in that. We don't say we're going to have a quiz or we're going to play a game. Everybody turns up, and then we'll probably spend about half an hour chatting, and that's in work time. So that's at about 4 o'clock. We encourage people to come along with a drink of their choice. And sometimes we just spend half an hour chatting. Sometimes someone will go, it's a really good game, I've been playing online with a friend, and we'll do that. If people don't want to do that, they'll leave the call. It's a bit more informal now. So, instead of just saying, you will come along to this meeting and you will do a quiz, we just turn up and then see what happens. It's a lot more natural.
Yeah, I just think fun, there should be more fun. And I think that's the thing, it's really hard to force fun, isn't it? Forced fun is not fun. My dog's barking, I'm so sorry. I guess to finish, we've got 15 minutes, and I thought it would be really nice to focus on some real positives and some ideas for the people who've tuned in tonight. And one of the things was maybe looking at, stories or real special moments at a time of change and uncertainty that each of you have experienced. Maybe start with you, Gordon. Is there something you'd like to share?
Yeah, it's not so much a story as such, more of a feeling about what's been going on, as you might imagine, where I'm working right now. So we work in an environment where we've got a lot of people who are quite young in our delivery teams, and some have only been in their careers 2, 3, 4 years. And they're doing delivery work and test work and so on. And they're working on a program that I term as a political punch bag, and it's really been quite inspiring to sort of see them just sort of brush off the bad news and stay committed to the cause. We don't need to stand up on all hands and tell people you're coming here to do this work so that coming here, sorry, that's the wrong term. You're doing this work to save lives. We don't need to really say that. People know why they're working on this program and this piece of work. In the early days, I was quite worried, probably about 3 or 4 weeks in, when there were some particularly damaging things happening that became, we all know the story about Excel and CSV and all that kind of stuff, and people piling on the bandwagon saying, Excel is not a database. Well, if you believe that any of that stuff was actually true, then probably more fool you. But it's quite damaging and hurtful to people working on the inside of that. And no one really took it to that heart. They just carried on. We forged ahead. We're carrying on with our pieces, with our work, and everyone still, comes onto our daily stand-ups with a smile, mostly. So that's been sort of my inspiration. I know it's not a specific event, but it's something that's quite, it's inspiring me, put it that way. Yeah.
Cool. Moving on to Mark. Go around the screen.
I mean, we're really good as a company because again, it's a young company. I used to be the oldest person that works at LADbible. I'm now not, which is nice. But we've got a lot of young people that have a lot of really good ideas about what we can do. We do a lot of good charity stuff. I mean, it's not, they're not inspirational stories, just really good ideas for things that we can do, that's worthwhile. We're currently doing it because we're all locked up again. This month, we're seeing who can do the most miles, either running, walking, cycling, and for every mile that we do, the founders are going to put £1 for every mile of the £1 to charity. We've got 2 bars in the offices in London, Manchester, that are full of beer.
Going off as well, is it?
yeah, not unsurprisingly for LADbible, but yeah, so we need to get rid of that. So we've auctioned all that stuff to our staff, and we're giving that money to charity as well. Yeah, we've just done a lot. You know, we've tried to do things for our audience as well. You know, with millions of people that watch LADbible, so we've tried to. You know, we got Ellie Goulding to do a set from her apartment for our audience, and a few things like that where we just thought, what can we do? People are locked up. That sounds awful. Locked down in their houses. You know, what can we do to make people feel better? You know, so as a company, we've done a lot of things like that. But yeah,
cool. Marsia.
I was considering what I was going to talk about in this slot, and we've had amazing examples, especially at the beginning of the spring lockdown, of people that would just put everything aside and see what they can do to make a difference to either the customers they work at or their environments, to make sure that there's work for everybody and that everybody gets on through to the other side. And that was really beautiful examples. But I think the main thing that stayed constant throughout up to even this point is I've watched a video about somebody saying about trust. And I mean, we touched on trust earlier, about trusting people that they will turn up and they will deliver the output that they should be delivering, and how you need to trust them to do that. And this talk specifically was about companies who installed monitoring software on their staff's machines to make sure that they do the work and that they log in and they do their hours. And this is just unacceptable, you know, because you need to trust people, and having a tool in place to replace that trust is not trust. That is still essentially distrust. So looking at how we've behaved as a leadership team where I am, knowing that we've gone through this, trusting our workforce, I believe that's reaped benefits. I've not actually come across specific poor performance or any kind of that kind of conversations. I've had people that struggled, but that's different from poor performance. And I think for me, the thing to take forward from this experience is that level of trust, and how with you trusting somebody, they would trust you back.
I agree. And it's that thing as well, you know, if I was like, my little boy was crying and it was 2 minutes to 9, do I hug my child or do I log on because I know that someone's watching me? Life isn't that easy when you're 24/7 at home, I don't think. I just don't think it's that plain.
Absolutely. And to add on to that, Sarah, is what we said about before we started, is acknowledging that we are entering people's homes, respecting the fact that this is where their children live, this is where they're allowed to live, and not to say not to frown when somebody's dog is barking or child enters the meeting or whatever, but actually maybe have a little bit of fun with that, and acknowledging I'm in your home. Thank you for allowing me, and being that respectful to people.
I agree. And it's the difference between working from home and being locked down. I still think is very, very different worlds, you know. Okay. And Bontle.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the interesting things has been that, you know, I only joined Virgin Media this year, so I didn't know what kind of company it was before I joined it. And it was interesting to join a company coming from the banking world and coming to a company where we don't really spend that much time talking about sales or what new product can we push or how can we get customers to get this. We spend a lot more time talking about purpose. We spend a lot more time talking about why do we do the work that we do. Even the ad campaigns, whatever you see outside about building connections that really matter, like that's actually what people live, breathe all the time in the organization, which I found very surprising because I just assumed that was marketing spin. But I think the thing that really has resonated with me is vulnerability. So having the CEO say, you know what, I'm having a rough time at the moment. I really don't like this. I am an extrovert and it's not good for me. And I'm struggling to work at home. Or having the CFO say, my mom is ill and I need to look after her. And, you know, I can't attend this because of that reason. People just being more authentic. And sometimes we think of authenticity as like, oh, you're so cool. And, you know, you talk about your struggles, whatever, but we don't think about it as actually saying, I'm not okay. And that I think is fine as well. As even our executive team members said, you know, I'm not okay. I'm doing the best I can, but I need your help. And we're going to do this together because, you know, at the moment, I'm not able to be 1000% awesome, whoever. And I've applied the same thing with my team. And it's been really liberating to have that level of vulnerability. Mark, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say, you know, we talk about trusting other people in the team as management, but I personally struggled very badly with working from home. I struggled to get the inspiration to actually to do a job. It took me a few weeks to get to the point where I was happy with my setup, where I was sitting, what I was doing through the day, what my routine was before I started firing all cylinders again. You know, I just, it's not something I've ever done before, even though I work in the tech industry, and it's, you know, it's fairly, you know, given now that we allow people to work from home. But I bounce off people. I like to be in the office. I like to be interactive with people. I'm losing out on a lot of conversations. I was going to say the water cooler, but, you know, just making a cup of coffee in the kitchen. I'm not getting that interaction with other teams and HR and finance that I would if I was in the office. And I struggled badly with that. And I had to, in doing that, I had to think about how other people are struggling at doing as well. You know, and you're right. People, you've got to trust people, and sometimes it's not that they're not productive because they're doing it on purpose. It's just that they are struggling with their environment and how they're working.
Absolutely. And it was like my son could hear the conversation, like he was waiting in the hall for us to talk about people coming in, and there he comes. And the weirdest thing is he's just taken a bottle of vinegar upstairs, and I have no idea what's happening in my house right now. There was an 8-year-old with a bottle of vinegar in my house. There we go.
It's like you were distracted.
Yeah, they see your weak. They see your weak points, don't they? They see your weak points. So we've got a couple of minutes left, and one of the things that I thought would be nice is to finish with maybe a little bit of positive advice from each of you. And really, you know, like lockdown's hard. They're long days. It's hard to, you know, get up in the morning because it's dark. It's hard to get out the house. So what is it that is inspiring you or inspires you as individuals to, you know, get up and do what you're doing at the moment? So Marsia, starting with you.
Thanks for putting me on the spot.
Oh, sorry.
I think for me, it's because what is the alternative? If I don't make my own happiness, I'm just going to be stuck being unhappy. So go find the things that makes it worthwhile and go do it. Sorry.
Perfect. No, that's fine. And Gordon?
Well, I can't say anything but the mission, really, can I? This particular role, I left the job that I loved to come and do this job for this mission. So that's what gets me out of bed every day. And it might sound, I suppose a bit, I don't know what the right word is, but genuinely, I want this to work. I want this to actually make a difference. And for me, it's the country doesn't have a choice, really. So that's what gets me out of bed. Yeah, and stress.
Yeah, that's a good reason. Bontle?
I think being kinder to myself has helped me get out of bed in the morning. I think I'm always a big advocate of being kind to others, but I haven't always extended the same courtesy to myself. You push yourself harder than anyone else pushes you, and you want to be on, especially for your team when you're leading big teams. You want to be on as hard as they're going. You want to go harder to, be there with them. But having the kindness to myself to be like, you know what? It's okay if you're not keeping up with your workouts as you wish you were doing. No one's going to love you any less because you don't have rock hard abs, right? And it's fine if you want to spend this evening watching Murder, She Wrote as opposed to doing some meditation, because quite frankly, that's what I want to be doing, right? So yeah. I think has really helped me, is just being way kinder with myself. And it's been really inspiring to see the lengths I can go to for myself in terms of giving myself a break.
Cool. And Mark, what's motivating you?
From a personal point of view, the first couple of months of lockdown, I did very little, drank too much, ate too much, and I've spent the last 6 months getting back into shape. And I've been doing a lot of sport, running and cycling in the last few months. But from a work point of view, it's spinning plates, isn't it? My aim is to one day have a whole team where everybody's happy and my boss is happy and nobody's shouting at us. It's never going to happen, but that's my aim, to be able to sit down and go, right, I don't need to do anything because everything's working.
That's amazing. And somebody asked me what gets me out of bed at the moment. Just to be very literal, I have an 11-week-old puppy, And if I don't get it out, it's going to pee on my floor. So that's what's getting me out of bed in the morning at the moment. So I just want to say thank you so much to you all. Thank you, Mark, Gordon, Marsia and Bontle. You've all been amazing. Thank you, audience, so much for your questions. Really enjoyed the session. I'm sure, if you want to reach out to me or any of the panelists, we'll, answer your questions. And thank you so much for coming by and joining us this evening. Now, I'm not sure if you're popping back or this is the very end.
Yeah, I'm here. That was amazing. That was such a good discussion, guys. So thank you all so much for joining in. And I hope the attendees all enjoyed the conversation. I think that was the best turnout we've actually ever had for one of these events. So we had a great turnout tonight, and I hope you've all taken something from the session. So yeah, it was a great conversation. Thanks, guys.
Oh, thank you so much.
Good luck with the vinegar.
Yeah.
There's something going on behind you again, Sarah.
Yeah, that's good.
More condiments being taken.
Why did Joe take the vinegar? Apparently bathing the dog in vinegar, so that's good news.
Is that a thing?
That doesn't sound healthy.
No, if you rinse hair with vinegar, it makes it really soft. That'll be why.
Oh, I think you better go, Sarah.
Yeah, I think.
Don't trust that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.